Hello and welcome back to another EXPO 2020 podcast at the Serbia Pavilion. Today, this is going to be quite weird because I'm interviewing one of my closest friends and longest serving colleagues, and we're going to try and interview each other in a proper way. So I think this might not quite work as a formal interview. I'd like to introduce you to Ana Ilić, who is the Senior Advisor to Prime Minister Ana Brnabić of Serbia and the Deputy Commissioner of the Pavilion of Serbia at the World Expo, and the founder of the Serbia Creates platform, and a woman of many talents. Let's be quite honest about this. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
What a surprise to see you here.
Wow, welcome to our pavilion.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Anytime. Gosh. So Ana and I have go back a long way, back to the days of the Serbia Film Commission.
Yeah.
Now that was something that you also had the idea to start.
Yes.
How did that come about? Because you weren't in the film industry.
No, not at all. I mean, I briefly worked as a journalist as young when I was studying law in Belgrade, and because I found law quite boring and not creative at all, at least studying it, I then had to find something fun to do on the side, and that was journalism. And I covered none of the politics or any hard stuff, but culture, specifically media, TV series, and films. And that's how I kind of started working in the creative industries. But then I later on worked on other things, mostly in media and PR, moved into other different sectors, and then worked my life literally led me to start working for international projects on economic development of Serbia for a number of years, mostly in tourism.
Which included the setting up the Meetings and Incentives Office, right?
That was the first Serbia Convention Bureau and Belgrade Convention Bureau, which is the process that I kind of steered with a bigger team, of course, of stakeholders from the industry. But that was really my first experience of gathering stakeholders around a common idea, a common interest, where we needed to create something that was non-existent before that.
And also, I would imagine dealing with how foreign people see Serbia.
Exactly. It was the first thing where I was actually thinking of positioning Serbia internationally in some way. And such a learning experience, and from such
And when was that? Because Serbia's reputation was not doing so well at that point, right, as well?
So this was back in 2005, when we had literally one 5-star hotel in the country. And how do you say? And an old conference center, the biggest in the region, but a bit depleted and not very modern. But we had this ambition, and we knew we had to do this, and the Convention Bureau was the best way
I want to know how you were exposed to the idea that you knew you had to do this. Was that through your personal travels or through exposure through work?
Well, this one I wasn't involved in from the beginning. I mean, the idea was brought to me.
Okay.
And I was assigned to look into it and do it, and then I
had the support. Aha moment.
Exactly. I had the support of some fantastic advisors, internationally really experienced people, and also local people who knew a lot from back in the Yugoslavian days. So they were all great, but there was nothing on the ground really. And as it always goes with these processes, and now having gone through 3 of these, I know that there has to be one person who is full-time committed to actually gathering all the information and steering this process and putting all the stakeholders together and be an arbitrator in a way where they have different interests, some conflicts and things like that, and then push things forward. And we managed to do that in 2006, I think. The 2 bureaus were established.
But I always found as well from my own career that not being a part of being in the industry but not part of it was also very helpful, because then you were able to almost be a neutral party.
Yes.
And able to then bring the players together.
But you have to learn a lot about the industry itself. You can't just assume that you know, and it's not general knowledge, it's very peculiar and very specific. So you have to learn a lot and learn quickly, but just be committed to it and have this vision and believe in it. You really have to believe in it, because there are so many obstacles all the time.
So after the Convention Bureau, you then went... Was the Convention Bureau also within the aid agency?
Yes.
Okay, so also within the Compete project, or
yes.
a different one. Then how did you come across the idea of a film commission and how it should operate? Where was that from?
Well, the team that was working at Booz Allen Hamilton on this USAID funded program, which was the competitiveness project for Serbia, came to an idea to investigate whether Serbia would be eligible to compete on the global market as a filming destination.
They were looking at a number of different things.
They were looking at Romania and Bulgaria. They were looking at different sectors, first of all, and then they were trying to find where there's potential for exports and investments. And then they saw what Romania and Bulgaria and Hungary were doing in the film industry, and they thought, well, this could be interesting, let's investigate. And I was tasked to do that, and then I went out and researched and talked to people. And I said, absolutely, we have to do this. It's so obvious.
Well, because, I mean, from what our research showed, that Serbia, as part of Yugoslavia, had been one of the busiest film destinations in Europe, and it had stopped, essentially, as a leading destination, at least. There was a lot of kind of smaller private sector activity happening, a couple of film productions coming in.
Exactly.
And so we began that process, I guess. You brought me in at that point.
Yes, then I brought you in. And we started from literally nothing.
Yeah.
There were no film studios back then. There were very few hotels that you would put a crew in. But there were film workers that were our biggest asset, really, that had huge tradition of filmmaking, knowledge was there, they were enthusiastic. And you and I bravely called it the film industry, and they were laughing, like there is no film industry in Serbia at that time. There was just, every film was an incident. There were no budgets, nothing was there. But I truly believed that we could compete, and the locations were there, and there is so much to offer. And to cut this long story short, we started working with film people and producers and TV commercial producers. Shocked completely.
They were being spoken to and expected to sit in the same room.
They were, yes, it was impossible to put them in one room, really, especially the film producers and the TV commercial producers. But they were all doing great stuff individually, and there was no joint effort, really. And they were all very surprised. Who are we? And who am I to be doing this, and why am I even interested, and all of that. And then we gradually built that confidence and then established the independent organization, which was the Serbia Film Commission, or we call it in Serbian an association, which is a professional association of film and TV producers. And we started going to location shows internationally, to LA, to the Cannes Film Festival, and so on. Developed the brand, the website, gathered all the information, started gathering the database of locations, all the information to bring in foreign productions to the country. And then that was how we started, basically.
So, and looking back at those days, what's your most memorable experience of the early days of the Film Commission?
I think the most memorable was the first visit to the location show in LA, where we all went together. There were like 15 or so of us, a nice group of film and TV producers. First time put together under one umbrella brand. We had our stand. We were so enthusiastic. We were like kids there. We brought so many promotional things, mugs and T-shirts and everything. We overdid it, really.
But it was amazing that we were on the same level as everybody else so quickly. I mean, it was almost within 6 months of us starting.
we were completely there. I mean, we could compete, and that was a great boost for us. And we saw that we had a good chance to actually get into the play, into the game, and it really started attracting interest. And at first, it was explaining where Serbia was, what Serbia is. It's not Siberia, it's not Syria, those kinds of things. And then every year you could see progress where they stopped in a couple of years asking those questions. Then they were like getting into more industry stuff, like do you have film incentives? What are the taxes in Serbia? How do we work
the film
there?
incentives
so
thing was a big process for you to go through, because for me that came very quickly as well. After the Film Commission had launched, it became very obvious that the success of it was tied into the potential of film incentives in Serbia.
Exactly.
And I remember it happening really quickly. At first, right? I mean, when we drafted the documents, we put it to a lawyer who tidied it up, and suddenly there was this draft of a film incentive. And after a few sort of hiccups and false starts, and then you also created the Serbia Film Incentive, which last year I think brought in 40 million euros.
Just last year, yes. But overall, more than 200 million euros.
So, I mean, and you know, it's hard to even conceive that us in that little basement room in
Dalmatinska Street,
in 2009 would have converted that idea into 200 million euros of foreign investment. And now a complete year-round working film industry.
Yes, it exploded literally over the past few years, primarily thanks to the incentives. Also, I have to say, thanks to understanding of the government, of the potential of the industry, and the government started investing more, not just into the incentive program, but also domestic productions. And the studios got built in the meantime. And so the whole thing started growing, and now we see 20 or so TV shows being shot at the same time around the country.
Which would never have happened before.
Never.
I mean, I remember when we started, we couldn't get two crews together for an international shoot.
It was unimaginable that this would happen. Really, this went way beyond our dreams.
And I think that there are interesting things from it as well, which we always understood, but had not been broadly, taken in by the members of the public. That, when a film shoot comes, and it spends money on the film shoot, but the money that's spent in the wider community is really where the benefit spreads across the whole country.
Absolutely, and just the most recent example, really, of the Australian production being filmed in Pirot in Stara Planina, which is a really remote place for film production. In Serbia, beautiful but remote. But they shot it all there, and it's now gotten into the official competition of the Sundance Festival, which is a huge success.
Yes. Really. But they helped rebuild the school and the hospital and bought an ambulance.
First of all, the whole crew lived for a few months in Pirot in a hotel there, helped the private business there. Then they rebuilt the ambulance, the little hospital there in the village. They redone some houses in the village. They worked with the villagers, with the locals, and it just worked out so well. And the crew was fantastic, really.
And that's really the kind of thing that we were hoping for all along.
Exactly.
And then there was a bit of a leapfrog from the independent NGO sector into the heart of government.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I know partly because we both were working alongside Ana Brnović within the Compete project. But it was your idea then to start this focus and make one of the pillars of the policy around creative industries. Now, tell us how you pursued that and how that came about.
Well, it started with my idea, which I kind of conceived back while I was in Film in Serbia, as an organization that I led for like almost 10 years. And I thought about that this whole thing film is just a part of something much bigger, and I could see it, and I thought there's a big potential. Now we've kind of sorted film out and it's working, but how about the artists? How about all the other creatives? How about video game developers, coders of all sorts? And so I talked to Anna Brnabić about it, and she quickly understood that as she does, she gets to the point very quickly, and she said, well, that's great, let's do it, we have to do it.
Well, because also it was a gap, right, at that point.
Yes, it was a
Nobody
gap,
else was doing it.
Nobody was doing it. Very rarely people even understood what creative industries mean, and what are the industries within the creative industries. But the numbers were there. The first thing we did was an analysis with the World Bank of the economic potential and impact of the creative industries in Serbia to see the numbers, to see the figures, how really it's working on the ground. And the figures were just clear proof of this huge potential.
That was unnurtured entirely.
That was completely unnurtured, and nobody even used the term, let alone worked on it in terms of policy, strategy, vision or of any sort. And that's how it started, really, with arguments, and then we put together again a group of really smart people from the industries that we call the Council for Creative Industries for the Prime Minister. And with them, we brainstormed then what we needed to do and how to do it. And then we quickly came to a conclusion that actually creative industries could be a way of positioning Serbia internationally as a country.
Well, I think we always had discussed that, even back in the film industry days,
exactly.
Because we were seeing very clearly how the positioning of a country, not necessarily Serbia back then, but how being in a film can completely change how a country was perceived. And as we said, seeing the impact of filming and the money being spent by creativity, these things all came together as a kind of an obvious thing.
Exactly.
And I think the timing of it was also fortuitous. We were ahead of the curve in the region, I think. But, around the world, there have been popping up these ideas for about a decade of how creativity could change how society functions, and how, the attractiveness of destinations and soft power, and, how to have influence in ways outside of traditional diplomatic circles and things like that. So it was really and I remember, we workshop it for about a year, and then the workshop that came up with the Serbia Creates idea suddenly took it into a new direction, because then we were given a brand that was tactile and mobile, and and then it really started. I'm not sure lots of people know that it was started off with you, me, and Bojana in the office.
Yes.
Basically sharing an office and coming up with ideas of things that we thought we could make work.
It was just the three of us, but we kind of had the vision, and then we consulted with the Council for Creative Industries, and through some brainstorming sessions, we very quickly came up with some really great people with the brand Serbia Creates. Serbia creates music, Serbia creates film, Serbia creates art, and then we realized, well, this can be used for anything. Serbia creates opportunities, Serbia creates experience, Serbia creates talent. And then we thought, well, this is actually a national brand that can completely present the entire country and tell a very nice story. And branding these days is all about storytelling. It's not just a logo, nice pictures or nice colors, it's the story that's behind it. And I think, and we all thought that we could tell a really good story with this, and that's how it kind of started. And then it went on to really started from the creative industries, where we got then the program of creative ambassadors, where we actually wanted to get the most talented people in various creative industries and science, I have to say, knowledge economy all together, to actually represent the country, people who had some international experience or recognition, to present the country internationally, and also serve as role models for our youth, really, as new role models for our youth.
And so that process, strangely, ended up bringing us to Dubai.
Yes.
And I don't think, I think the first moment for me that I realized that this was potentially a brand that could work on like so many, was the Air Serbia plane tail. And seeing that flight arriving at the airport with the Serbia Creates tail was just amazing for me. But as you know, I pushed very hard for us to take on this project, even though you were going to do all the work and I wasn't. Because I thought that this opportunity for us to demonstrate once and for all how a sort of a cohesive national branding effort could significantly change the way Serbia is presented and received.
Yes.
And as we sit here today, we have a meeting of 100 business people who are coming to invest in Serbia. We're preparing for a live music concert of Serbian music on the forecourt with Slobodan Kulja and Balkanopolis. Did you ever imagine that it's not even 4 years that we've been talking about this, let alone doing it. Did you ever imagine that this would be something that Serbia Creates would achieve?
Never. Honestly, never. But in the meantime, we managed to build a great team of people that we can rely on, that are experienced and enthusiastic and just devoted to this and are working so hard, really. And this is the best way to show what actually Serbia Creates is all about and how we want to show what Serbia is today. And the exhibition actually is the best visual expression of our vision.
Yes.
And this is great. I'm so proud. And in terms of not just telling the story and visually packaging it so nicely with the video production by Lazar Bodroža and the costumes and uniforms by Ivana Vasic and so many other creative people being involved, but also of just how all of the content, where we got the whole country and the Chamber of Commerce and the Development Agency of Serbia working together so closely, and now having over 1,000 business people that have visited, and so many ministers and officials and schools and faculties this week. It's everybody is here, all under one umbrella brand, all about the creativity and innovation and the creative industries, and it just makes me very, very proud, really, of everything we've done so far. And I can see there is a lot more to do, but it's the most structured way we've ever presented Serbia. Really.
And I think even the president noted that on his first visit here, and when he brought the Sheikh of the United Arab Emirates as I think the fact that there was that level of pride in the way that Serbia is being presented. And I think everybody who comes through the pavilion is aware of, from Serbians who seem to come here, they seem to be taken aback by how much of a leap forward this is in terms of a unified way of presenting the country.
Exactly, and I was very worried by how people would perceive this and whether they would own it and like it and everything. But even the president, first time he visited, he said, well, this is actually the new standard of presenting Serbia internationally that we should always use, and that's just the new level. And I'm so happy, and that's the best compliment we could get, really, from somebody who not an expert in branding, really, understands and sees how important and good this is.
But I also think that we did a good job, if I say so myself, on creating that bridge between the tradition and the modern. We've been talking with Sloba, and the fact that we did talk about the heritage and the history and the culture of Serbia, but it was all presented in new ways. Even with the VR was something that when we were first discussing it, we were like, okay,
we're not sure,
but it's actually worked incredibly well as a way for us to demonstrate even the sense of Serbia as just the very fact that we're presenting ourselves in this way is a really interesting change, I think. And I don't think we can easily go back from doing stuff like this.
Yes, we really upped the game now, and so what do we do at the next Expo is a big question. But it's a great game to play, and it's making us more creative, and we have to think about it thoroughly. But it's just to see people's faces and how they surprised are with what they see, and Serbian people coming here and feeling proud.
Every time I've flown back and forth for this event, I've ended up sitting next to Serbian people who've been to Expo, and they talk the whole way back about how proud they are of the way we're presented.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Exactly. And it's really not easy to show everything Serbia has in a meaningful way that people can understand, and to create content that this lasts for 6 months, 12 hours a day. And you have to keep it interesting all the time. It's not easy. And we've done it. So we're very, very happy with how it's going.
And so then the big question comes then, what's next? What else are you planning?
Well, I mean,
Ložionica. Let's talk
Ložionica is our next huge project, which is an old industrial railway, actually roundhouse building that's completely depleted, but in a very nice area of the city, owned by the state. And now we are turning that into creative hub, really a multifunctional space for the creatives and innovators, where they can get together and work on their ideas, but also express and show their art or creativity. This is kind of a place that our capital is missing in its otherwise really rich cultural offer. But we see that there is a place in the gap where people can get together and work on this. And so now we've done competition for the architectural design, and I'm so happy that the winners of the competition are very young team of architects that we're now going to work with further to develop this to very details. And there is a budget for this, so we'll start seeing it being renovated next year and hopefully open by the end of 2023.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that, from the research that I was doing on creative industries and how they function and how they fit together, the notion of an institution, a building hub as a place for people to gather is an incredibly important one, just in terms of sharing ideas.
Exactly.
Right. You know, the tools that are used to put together a tractor or a computer, there are tools and there are materials, and in the creative industries, a lot of the tools and materials are people's brains.
Exactly.
And so to find ways of bringing those together to stimulate creative outputs.
Sure.
And I think that will be one of the biggest changes that Ložionica will be able to bring to the city.
Yes, and just to put all the creatives in one place, because all the industries so far were in their silos. Like the fine arts people are a separate thing, the audiovisual people are a separate thing, the coders are separate, video gamers are separate. But then now when they're together, and we've seen this through our ambassadors program, where we have people of different profiles and backgrounds and crafts get together, and they're all creative by nature, and they just create new, fantastic things. So we see this as a generator of many new things. And also a big part of it will be education. Just creating a pool of new talent. We'll work with especially high schoolers and very young people who are interested in creative industries to learn the vast, array of professions within the industries and find themselves in some.
Because I think that's another one of the things that I noticed in this research that I was doing, is that the industries, the subsectors of the industry, music, film, performing arts, whatever, all function relatively cohesively. They all have organizations that manage them. They've got workspaces but they don't. And this happens right across the region. There are very few institutions or organizations or places to go where the entire industry of creativity is brought together.
Exactly.
And I think that we will see these things start to happen across the whole region. But I think this is going to make some fairly major changes to the way that the industry sees themselves in Serbia as well.
Oh,
and also as for visibility of the industry, because it's also going to be a destination, right?
Absolutely, and it all ties in so well into tourism, where it will actually certainly become also another tourist destination in Belgrade. And then it will also connect internationally with similar hubs and places in other countries. And also there is a big creative district being built in Novi Sad, which will be our partner in this, certainly. So it all ties in together really well, and it gives me an opportunity to work with the creative people some more.
But the other side of the job, which is going to be more challenging for both you and I, is the digitization of things like blockchain and NFTs. And you had some ideas about how government agencies such as ours can share information, and what are you thinking on that?
Well, we've been talking to some other countries, and especially UAE while we are here, about actually initiating an establishment of a global alliance of creative countries. Because we were recognized as a leader in creative industries by EXPO here, and that gave me an idea. Well, who are our partners in this? Why I felt kind of alone in the world, and I thought, well, let's make an alliance of the leading creative countries where we can exchange knowledge, and especially in terms of policy. And because the technologies are changing everything so quickly, and the creative industries are also changing so rapidly, the governments need to follow the industries with the policy regulations that are nurturing to the industries, really, and we need to learn from each other quickly and adapt. And so we are probably starting this global alliance of creative countries where we can actually all together come to some new innovations in the management of creative industries, so that our creatives
it will be
can
so
flourish.
Difficult, right, to keep track of all of the changes if we don't have easy ways to deal with, to contact each other, peer organizations and sectors around the world.
Absolutely, and provide platform for the creatives to cooperate more.
Fantastic. Is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, I often ask myself that, and because I'm usually an overthinker, overanalyzing everything, I usually am very careful about every step I take and every decision I make. And you know that I ask you guys in my team always whether something is good or wrong, or what you thought about everything. I wouldn't change much, really. Maybe some little small steps here and there, but in general, I'm very happy, and everything I've worked on is still working and progressing and flourishing, so why would I complain, really? And I get to work with amazing people in the office and all around the world, and with the so talented creative people. I have no real talent for art myself, but I appreciate art and I respect them so much, and I just love working with them, and they inspire me. So whatever I can do to help this is my mission.
You told me you had an interview the other day with a journalist who commented that it was like dealing with a Danish government agency when dealing with Serbia Creates. I mean, given Denmark's reputation for creativity and design, and I mean, it would be very nice if eventually people are saying that we have a Serbian reputation.
I actually think Serbia has already that kind of sophistication and that kind of elegance, really, in the creativity and arts, and people just don't know about it enough. And with this brand and with the stories and the continuous production of the arts and stories about it, and just placing them on an international market and media, we need to convey this message continually, and that's how a brand is built, really, over time. And I think we are on a really good way to actually succeed and completely change the perception of Serbia.
Anything else?
I'm fine, thank you. We can now go enjoy Sloba's concert.
So, thank you very much, Anna, for this lovely podcast. And Yes, well, just keep a lookout and see what Anna Ilić does next, because it's bound to be big and it's bound to be exciting and it's bound to ruffle feathers, but it's bound to get done.
Only if I have the support of my team and you.
So thank you very much. Join us for another podcast. There are more to come this week with more interesting people in Dubai with us. Look forward to you joining us then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.